The pain in my stomach was unbearable, but what hurt even more was seeing my parents hand over a car key to my sister while I sat there with a hospital estimate in my lap. That was the day I realized I wasn't their child. At least, not in their hearts. The pain had been creeping up on me for weeks. At first, I thought it was just indigestion or maybe something I ate, but it kept getting worse. It started as a dull ache after meals, then turned into sharp cramps that made it hard to stand up straight. I tried to brush it off, kept working, taking over-the-counter pills, sipping warm water like old remedies said. But nothing helped. It got to the point where even breathing felt heavy, like my own body was warning me that something was deeply wrong. I went to the local clinic near my job, hoping it would be something simple. The doctor there gave me that look. The one where they smile softly but their eyes say something else. She ran a few basic tests and referred me to a specialist. When I finally got in to see the general practitioner, he didn't mince words. "You might need surgery," he said plainly, tapping his pen on my chart. "If this is what I think it is, it's not going away on its own." I sat there, heart pounding in my chest. Surgery? That word sounded expensive. I didn't even have proper insurance. I worked part-time at a small shop, barely making ends meet. And the idea of asking for help, especially from my parents, filled me with dread. You see, I've always known I wasn't the favorite. My younger sister, Amanda, could do no wrong. Straight A's, perfect hair, perfect smile. The kind of daughter my mom bragged about at church and posted all over Facebook. Me, I was just there. I didn't get into the fancy college. I didn't date the right guys. I didn't shine the way Amanda did. And every time I asked for something growing up, it came with a long sigh, a lecture, or a guilt trip. But this was different. This wasn't about a new dress or school money. This was my health. My body. My life. I knew I had to speak up no matter how uncomfortable it made me. So one night I waited until dinner was over, until the dishes were stacked in the sink and the TV was humming in the background. My hands were sweating and my voice shook when I finally said, "Can I talk to you both for a minute? It's important." They looked at me like I had interrupted something important, even though all they were doing was finishing off a bowl of popcorn and watching a rerun. My dad muted the TV with a sigh, and Mom crossed her arms like she already knew she wouldn't like what I was about to say. I tried to ignore the tightness in my chest and just focus on getting the words out. "I went to the doctor today," I began. "They think I might need surgery. It's something serious." There was a pause. Not concern. Not panic. Just silence. Mom finally tilted her head, like I had told her I had a sore throat. "Isn't it just that stomach thing again? You always complain about your stomach. It'll pass." "No," I said, trying not to sound frustrated. "They ran some tests. It's not going away. The GP said it could get worse if I don't act soon." Dad rubbed his face with both hands, then leaned back in his chair like he was carrying the weight of the world. "Honey, we're going through a rough patch right now. Things are tight. You know how inflation is these days. We're still paying off the home repairs from last year. It's not a good time." "I'm not asking for luxury," I said, trying not to cry. "Just help with the surgery. I can cover some but not all. Please." Mom leaned forward, voice clipped. "Have you looked into medical loans? Or maybe one of those online fundraiser pages? People do that all the time now. You're not a child anymore. You need to start thinking like an adult." That one hit hard. I swallowed, but it felt like there was a rock in my throat. I wasn't expecting a blank check. I hoped for warmth. For care. For someone to say, "We'll figure this out." But instead they made it about how inconvenient I was. How expensive I was. Dad stood up and grabbed his glass. "We're not saying we don't care. We're just doing the best we can, okay?" I nodded, even though everything inside me was shaking. I could barely hold eye contact anymore. I stared at the kitchen floor tiles, the ones I used to mop when I was younger, the ones I once spilled juice on and got grounded for. Everything in this house reminded me of being second place. I mumbled, "Okay," and turned to leave. No one stopped me. No one said, "Wait, let's talk more." I walked down the hallway, the TV volume clicking back on behind me like nothing happened. I sat on the edge of my bed, my hands trembling, and for the first time in a long while, I truly felt invisible. Like if I disappeared it wouldn't make much of a difference. A week passed, but the ache in my side didn't. The painkillers dulled it, but it never truly left. I stayed quiet, kept to myself, went to work, came home, and tried to pretend like everything was okay. I didn't mention the surgery again. What was the point? They'd already made it clear where I stood. That Saturday morning, I was upstairs in my room, half-heartedly folding laundry when I heard the sound of laughter outside. Then tires rolling up the driveway. I peeked through my blinds and saw Amanda's face light up as she stepped out of a rideshare car. She was home from college, bright-eyed, perfectly dressed, nails done, not a worry in the world. Dad waved her over with a grin that stretched ear to ear. "Come on, come out here." She looked confused but excited and followed him to the driveway. Mom came out from the garage holding a big silver key with a ribbon tied around it. And I saw it. Parked right there in the middle of our driveway was a brand new white Mercedes, sparkling like it had just rolled off a showroom floor. The sunlight caught on the chrome and gleamed across the windshield. Amanda froze for a second before realizing what was happening. "No way," she squealed, dropping her bags and running straight into Mom's arms. "You got me a freaking Mercedes." "Oh my God. You deserve it," Mom said, holding her tight. "You've worked so hard. Straight A's, Dean's List, internships. This is just the beginning for you." Dad chuckled proudly. "Only the best for our girl." They were all laughing, hugging, taking pictures. Amanda even started doing a little happy dance next to the car. The engine purred when Dad started it up, showing her all the features. Sunroof, leather seats, built-in screen, Bluetooth. Everything top of the line. Amanda slid into the driver's seat like she belonged there. Like this was always meant to be hers. And I just stood at my window, laundry forgotten in my hands, watching it all like I didn't exist. The same parents who couldn't even offer to split my surgery cost just handed Amanda the keys to a car that could have paid for my procedure twice over. The same people who told me times are tough and loans are an option were now dancing in the driveway with a ribbon-wrapped luxury gift. I didn't feel jealous of the car. I felt crushed by the message it sent. Too expensive for me, but not for her. I barely left my room that week. Every step I took sent a dull ache through my stomach, like my body was quietly begging me to stop pretending I was okay. I tried different over-the-counter meds, antacids, painkillers, even herbal teas my coworker swore by, but nothing worked for long. The pain would come back sharp and heavy, usually in the middle of my shift when I could least afford to slow down. So I worked through it. I picked up extra hours, told my manager I was available any day, any time. I needed the money. If no one was going to help me, then I'd help myself. I cleaned tables, refilled coffee, restocked shelves, moving like a machine, trying not to wince in front of customers. When I got home, the house was full of laughter. Amanda's voice echoed down the hallway, loud and excited, always talking about her car. How smooth the ride was. How people turned their heads when she parked at campus. How her friends were jealous, asking how she got so lucky. I didn't join any meals. I'd grab a plate quietly after everyone was done or just skip dinner altogether. I couldn't pretend to smile, couldn't fake excitement for someone who never had to fight for anything. I'd lie in bed scrolling through her social media, pictures of her leaning against the hood of that Mercedes, captioned with things like, "Manifestation works," and "Dream big, babes." People commented heart emojis and "so proud of you," like she'd climbed a mountain. But I knew the truth. She didn't pay for that car. She didn't sacrifice anything. My parents handed it to her. Just like they always did. Me. I was stuck fighting for my health, working through pain, and still somehow feeling guilty for even asking for help. My chest felt heavy, not just from the physical pain but from something deeper. Something colder. I started to believe maybe I wasn't meant to be loved like her. Maybe I wasn't shiny enough, loud enough, worth enough. Because in this house, the quiet child, the responsible one, the one who didn't ask for much, just became invisible. They didn't see me. Not when I was hurting. Not when I was trying. Not even when I was breaking. It was Thursday afternoon and I had just come home from a double shift. I was exhausted, barely able to stand. The pain had gotten worse, deeper, sharper. I went straight to the kitchen for a glass of water, hoping it would settle the burning in my side. That's when I heard the front door open. "Hello," a familiar voice called out. "Anybody home?" It was Grandpa. I froze for a second. We hadn't seen him in weeks. He wasn't the type to just drop by. He usually called ahead or visited on birthdays. But there he was, standing in the doorway with his brown coat, old walking stick, and those sharp eyes that always seemed to know everything without asking much. I forced a smile. "Hey Grandpa. Mom and Dad aren't home." He looked at me closely, not smiling back. You look pale, he said, his eyes narrowing. You sick? I shook my head quickly. Just tired. Long week at work. He stepped closer and set his stick against the wall. You're sweating. Your hands are shaking. I turned away, pretending to tidy the counter. It's nothing. Just a little stomach thing. Doctor said maybe some rest. But Grandpa wasn't buying it. He walked over slowly and pulled out a chair at the table. Sit, he said firmly. I hesitated, but his voice had that weight to it, the kind that made you listen. I sat down, avoiding his eyes. What's going on? He asked quietly. I bit my lip, shaking my head. It's fine, Grandpa. I'll be okay. He leaned in closer. Has the doctor seen you? What did he say? I swallowed hard. He said I might need surgery. But it's expensive. So I'm just trying other stuff for now. Meds, rest, you know. He didn't respond at first. Just stared at me. And then he leaned back slowly, his face unreadable. Did you ask your parents? He asked calmly. I nodded. They said we're struggling financially. That I should look into a loan. So, I didn't push. His face changed then. His eyes, once warm, suddenly turned ice cold. The lines around his mouth tightened. He didn't yell. He didn't raise his voice. He just went completely still. The kind of still that makes the room feel colder. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he stood up. I saw Amanda's new car on Facebook, he said without looking at me. Brand new Mercedes, huh? I nodded quietly. He stepped forward and hugged me tightly. The kind of hug that says more than words ever could. I felt safe for the first time in weeks. He let go, looked me in the eyes and gently patted my cheek. I'll take care of it, he said in a low voice. Then without another word he picked up his stick, walked to the door and left. Sunday dinner was a tradition in our family, something that felt like it had always been part of the rhythm of our lives. Every Sunday without fail we gathered around the big oak table. Dad at the head, Mom beside him, Amanda chatting excitedly and me quietly trying to stay out of the way. It was a chance for everyone to catch up, but that day felt different. Grandpa had called earlier in the week and insisted on hosting. He said he had something important to say, but when he mentioned it, his voice was so serious I couldn't help but feel a knot tighten in my stomach. When we arrived at Grandpa's house, everything seemed normal at first. The smell of roast chicken filled the air, and the table was set with all our favorite dishes. Mashed potatoes, green beans, corn, and of course the homemade pie for dessert. It felt like any other Sunday, but there was an undercurrent of tension. Grandpa, normally a quiet man, had this energy around him. Like he was about to drop a bomb and no one knew it yet. Amanda, as usual, was the first to speak. She strutted in, her head held high, and the first thing out of her mouth was, "You guys, you won't believe how many people complimented my car on campus this week. It's like I'm famous now." She laughed, practically beaming with pride. Dad chimed in, "Well, you deserve it, sweetheart. You've worked so hard and you've earned every penny. That car's a reward for your dedication. We're so proud of you." Mom nodded enthusiastically. "You really do deserve it. You've made us proud, Amanda." I felt the words sting as they echoed in the air. I stayed silent, eating my food slowly, my gaze fixed on my plate. I didn't know what hurt more. The fact that they were so blinded by their pride in Amanda, or the simple truth that they had never done anything like this for me. I didn't want to sound bitter, but the unfairness of it all hung in the air like a thick fog. After dessert, when everyone had relaxed a little, Grandpa stood up without warning. He was quiet, so quiet that the clinking of forks on plates stopped for a moment. His eyes moved slowly over the table, landing on each of us, one by one. Then he cleared his throat. "I've been thinking a lot about family," he started, his voice steady but carrying a weight. "And what it means to be there for the people who need us most. There's something I have to do. Something long overdue." Everyone looked at each other, confused. Grandpa was always the quiet, unassuming type. This wasn't like him. "I've rewritten my will," he continued, his voice firm but calm. "I've decided that every single dollar I own, everything I've worked for in my life, will go to the one person in this family who was left behind when she needed her parents most. The one person who had to struggle through pain, fear, and loneliness while others were given everything they ever wanted. The one person who always did the right thing and still found herself ignored." My heart raced. I felt a lump form in my throat. Grandpa was looking right at me now. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Mom and Dad exchanged nervous glances, their faces pale. Amanda, for the first time all evening, was silent, her smile faltering. She didn't understand. She didn't know what was coming. Grandpa paused for a moment, his gaze never leaving mine. "The money," he said softly but with undeniable authority, "is for you, my dear. You've always been the one who mattered. You've always been the one who deserved more. Now you'll have it. Because you are worth it." A stunned silence filled the room and I could feel the weight of their eyes on me. The shock on my parents' faces, the confusion on Amanda's. My heart pounded and I almost couldn't breathe. I looked at Grandpa, tears threatening to spill over. His words were like a shield, protecting me in a way no one else ever had. Grandpa's voice broke through the silence again. "This is not just about money. It's about fairness. About seeing the person who was always overlooked. It's time she had what she deserved." I couldn't say anything. My mind was racing. But in that moment something inside me shifted. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't the one who was always forgotten. I was the one who was seen. And everything was about to change. The room was still, frozen in disbelief. My parents stared at Grandpa, their faces slowly draining of color. At first there was a nervous laugh from Mom, followed by Dad trying to joke it off, but it didn't feel like the usual light-hearted dinner chatter. Their voices trembled, caught somewhere between embarrassment and fear. "Well, Dad, you know we didn't mean anything by it," Dad said, his attempt at a chuckle coming out a little too forced. "Amanda's just been working hard at school and—" "Hard at school?" Grandpa interrupted, his voice sharp, cutting through the tension. "You think that's enough to justify treating your own daughter like an afterthought?" Mom flinched, her eyes darting to me briefly before quickly looking away as if she didn't want to meet my gaze. But Grandpa wasn't finished. He walked to his old desk in the corner, opened a drawer and pulled out a stack of papers. Medical reports, receipts, bills and invoices. He brought them to the table with a slow, deliberate pace, laying each one down in front of my parents like they were pieces of evidence in a courtroom trial. "Here," Grandpa said, tapping the medical reports with his finger. "These are the records from the doctor. The ones that show exactly how badly your daughter has been suffering. She came to you for help and you turned her away. You couldn't even find it in yourselves to give her the one thing she needed, support. Instead you let her struggle. You left her to fend for herself." The silence deepened as the reality of his words sank in. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, the sting of betrayal mixing with the anger that had been building inside me for weeks. The reports, the invoices, the truth, it was all there laid out for them to see. Grandpa wasn't holding back. He then picked up another sheet of paper. "And here," he said, pointing to the invoice for the Mercedes. "This is the car you bought for Amanda, right? The one that cost more than most people make in a year. I'm sure she didn't ask for it though, right?" Sister looked like she was about to speak, her lips trembling. "I didn't ask for the car," she blurted out, a defensive tone in her voice. She looked at me, then at Grandpa, clearly flustered. It was a surprise. Grandpa raised his hand, signaling for her to stop. "That's true," he said calmly. "You didn't ask for the car. But you also never asked if your sister was okay." His voice was quiet, but the weight of those words slammed into the room like a thunderclap. Amanda opened her mouth but nothing came out. She couldn't defend herself. She hadn't thought about me, hadn't once stopped to consider that while she was getting the car of her dreams, I was being ignored, left in pain, struggling with a body that seemed to betray me and a family that barely noticed. Grandpa turned back to my parents. "You didn't ask either," he continued, his voice more somber now. "You didn't think about your daughter's health or what she might be going through. All you saw was the image of the perfect, obedient child who followed the rules and didn't make trouble. But life isn't about playing favorites. Life isn't about who's the loudest or who brings home the best grades. Life is about showing up when it matters." The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. I sat there feeling the fire of truth course through me. It wasn't just about the money or the car anymore. It was about the years of neglect, the years of being invisible. And Grandpa, in one simple act, had given me a voice. My parents were silent now, unable to speak. Mom's face had gone a shade of pale that I had never seen before, and Dad's hands shook as he fidgeted with his napkin, his guilt plain for everyone to see. Amanda looked down at her lap, her face flushed, but no one said a word. Grandpa's voice broke the silence once more, soft but resolute. "You can no longer ignore what you've done. It's time to make it right." Grandpa didn't waste any time. The next morning, after the dinner that turned everything upside down, he drove me to a private hospital in the city. It was a place I could never have afforded on my own, a sterile white space that felt almost too clean for someone like me. My stomach churned at the thought of the cost, but Grandpa was insistent. He didn't ask for my opinion, he was taking charge, doing what needed to be done. The drive there was silent, except for the hum of the car's engine and the soft tapping of Grandpa's hands on the steering wheel. I sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, the weight of everything still hanging over me like a storm cloud. I couldn't help but think of how my parents had looked the night before, too stunned to speak, too ashamed to face the truth. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was this moment, this step toward fixing the broken parts of me both inside and out. Grandpa made sure I had everything I needed. He covered the full cost of the surgery, the consultations, the aftercare. No questions asked. No hesitation. It was as if, for the first time in years, someone truly cared about me. Not because of some obligation or expectation, but because they genuinely wanted to help. The surgery was complicated and the recovery was slow. There were days when the pain was almost unbearable, when I wondered if I could make it through. But then I'd remember Grandpa's words the night before. "I'll take care of it." And he did. He visited me every day after the surgery. He'd sit by my bedside, holding my hand, telling me stories from his younger days, distracting me from the pain. There was no rush, no deadline for recovery. He let me heal at my own pace, never once making me feel guilty for taking the time I needed. It was like the love I had always been missing was being given to me in full force now. And it wasn't just physical healing that took place in that hospital room. It was emotional too. I thought about everything that had happened, the way my parents had treated me, how they couldn't even see the pain I was in, and how they chose to shower my sister with luxuries while I was left to struggle. But even as I recovered, I knew something had shifted in me. Sometimes the people who owe you love don't give it. My parents owed me everything. A lifetime of love, a childhood full of care, a chance to not feel invisible. But they hadn't given it. Yet here was Grandpa, a man who didn't owe me anything, stepping in when I needed it the most. It made me realize that love doesn't come with a price tag. It doesn't require grand gestures or the newest cars. It's about showing up when it matters, about being there for someone when they're at their lowest. Grandpa had done that for me. And even though the surgery was over, even though the physical wounds had started to heal, I knew that this bond, this love we shared now, was going to last far longer than any scar on my body. Weeks later, after I was finally strong enough to return home, things with my family were awkward, to say the least. My sister, Amanda, tried to reach out, offering some half-hearted apology for the way things had gone down. She even said she felt bad about the car, but there was no sincerity in her words. I could see it in her eyes. She hadn't learned anything. She was still the same person, the same self-centered girl who had taken what was given to her without a second thought. She wasn't ready to see things from my perspective. My parents weren't much better. They acted like nothing had happened, as if Grandpa's intervention was a one-time deal. They sent a few text messages, maybe called once, but their efforts felt empty. The damage was done. I had been invisible to them for too long, and now that they were trying to make amends, it felt too late. They had missed their chance to show me that I mattered. But through it all, Grandpa stayed by my side. And that was enough. Our bond had grown stronger than ever before. We didn't need to speak every day or make grand gestures. The quiet moments, the understanding, the care he had shown me were all that mattered now. He had proven that when someone truly cares about you, they don't need to be told how to love you. They just do it, even when you least expect it. As I sat with Grandpa one afternoon looking out over the garden in the backyard, I realized something. Sometimes the people you hope will show up for you don't. But when the right people do, when they step in without hesitation, that's when true healing happens. And for me, that healing had come from a place I never expected. Grandpa, the one who loved me not because of my past but because of who I was right then in that moment.